Hi, everybody. If I'm popping up on Facebook, it must be Wednesday, right? It's our middle of the week, first week in November. Don't forget this weekend we fall back an hour to Eastern Standard Time. Save the comments. I hate it too. It's a national thing. The feds really have to make some changes. Daylight savings time. I prefer to stay at daylight savings time year round, but either way, pick one. But this weekend is the one where we fall back. We get an extra hour of sleep. So keep that in mind when you hit the hay on Saturday night, okay? All right, going to touch base on some things. This goes back to last week, and it's been a discussion we've been having for a long time, and that is the bills that we're putting forward to help with our election integrity. The situation is this, again, I've said it before, but I'll say it again, because of Proposal 3 of a couple of years ago, now in our Constitution, people can vote absentee with no excuse, and they can register the same day. There are also issues with that sort of thing, because now we've got to get that ballot back, right, by greater numbers. What type of drop boxes do we have? How many do we have? Do you have, and are they secure? That sort of thing. There's always been drop boxes, but they're generally at a county or township clerk, and they're attached to the building. But in some areas, do you put them in other places? So those types of things have to be to followed up on. And now, because in the old days when you had to be present to say I want this to be able to vote, or it's that same day, come in and register. How do we know who you are, especially on the fly? And one of our bills have said, currently in Michigan law, you have to have an ID or you sign an affidavit that says I'm Jack O'Malley and I'm who I am. In the last election, there were about 18,000 of those across the state where I don't have my ID or I don't have an ID, I am who I am. Now, again, smaller communities, a clerk might know you or you've been there forever. But the point is, what type of, how can you prove who you are? So we had some bills, and among others, that the governor continues to veto. And I'll get into the bills in here in just a second, but part of the issue is the governor wants the message that it was the most perfect election ever. It wasn't. Was it extremely the other way? Again, I don't believe so. I haven't seen that. But there were issues because of the Secretary of State sending out unsolicited ballot applications and so on and so forth. So we are looking at legislation that addresses this. And time again, the governor vetoes it. Now, I can already read the comments. Jack, don't you know she's going to do that? Part of that is yes. Obviously, we know she's going to do it because she has to stand up to her base. Because if we admit that maybe this is a good idea, this piece of legislation, then we're saying the election wasn't perfect, and that's what we've been saying. So they're in a stuck spot. The point is, again, when we send this legislation, which makes all the sense in the world, and she vetoes it, that is to wake up those people in the middle that go, well, wait a minute here, that bill makes sense. Why'd she veto it? Because of politics. That's how this works. To explain how the governor is playing her cards and where she's at on something, you get her to show them. For example, here are a couple of these bills that she vetoed. Bill 5007 was designed to cross off initial and renewal expenses to state IDs, but it was tie-barred to some legislation that the governor didn't like. That legislation banned the Secretary of State off the initial and barred the Secretary of State and other election officials from mailing out unsolicited absentee ballot applications. If you want an absentee ballot, fine, but you got to ask for it. I don't see a problem with that, as opposed to just saying, oh, send them to everybody, because there could be some problems. And that also makes the ID of who you are so much very important. But so those were tie-barred, means if one passes, the other passes, right? So she had to veto them both. But here's the deal. Another bill said, hey, I tell you what, if you don't have an ID, we'll cover the cost. It's $10. We'll cover the cost, you can get an ID. So no one should be able to say, well, I couldn't afford one. Yeah, we're paying for it. And here's the other thing about getting a state ID, AKA driver's license for the most part. You can get just a state ID. But there are 10 million people in the state of Michigan. 7,153,000 and change have driver's licenses. So roughly 3 million don't. A couple of million of those are probably kids under the legal age. So and there's a certain group that, whatever. Point is, it's ridiculous to say that, it's impossible to get a driver's license. We're going to pay for them. So again, these bills were vetoed because the governor, if she signed them, in her mind, I'm sure, would be admitting the fact that they screwed up, and Secretary Benson should not have sent out all of those ballot proposals a year ago. So it just continues, but we've got to continue sending these bills. Another reason, well, what are you doing about it? Well, here's what we're doing about it. The problem is the governor is getting in the way. So I'm just bringing you up to speed, letting you know that the governor continues to use that veto pen on logical bills and legislation to safeguard and protect our election. All right, moving on. Another big issue is the governor in a move. This is such a crock of crap that it's actually kind of funny. So the no fault insurance. We changed the rules here 2 years ago now, and the whole thing is being put into place now. One of the reasons it takes so long is, again, insurance and all of that, how it works, as I understand it, and I'm no insurance mega expert, but they go off tables and regular things, so they've got to make sure all the numbers work and wash out, right? It's all done on statistics and the chance of risk and that sort of thing. So it takes a while to implement. So one of the things in Michigan with the no fault was we had this catastrophic fund that everybody paid into. And if my memory serves me correct, the last big payment that we all paid under the old law was like $210 a year into this catastrophic fund. Well, when the new law came into place, you had choices, right, to the amount of insurance you had to have. And one of them was to stay on unlimited. Turns out like 80% of the people in the state, myself included, stayed on unlimited. Well, when you figure in those numbers, a lot more money came in than they thought was going to be there. So the point is, at this current stage, the catastrophic fund has about $5 billion sitting in it. Now that money is to be paid to people with catastrophic injuries to make sure they're covered, right? Okay. So as I remember, I'm going off my memory here, when all of this started, when we changed the law, the catastrophic fund had about $2.5 billion in it. So in the last year, it's doubled. And the law states that they can have, or they need to have, 120% of what they need in the bank so that they've got everybody covered, right? And if you're over that 120%, you have to refund the dollars to the people of Michigan. And that's happened before. And this audit is done every couple of 3 years. Well, the next audit is next year. I think it's supposed to happen in the spring. Well, the governor, maybe seeing flagging poll numbers or wanting to take advantage of the fact that she saved unemployment or the insurance situation, which she did not. She was going to veto it, if you remember. She was going to veto auto insurance reform. But we pushed it through the House of Representatives and the Senate. So don't let the governor tell you she's the one who got it done. Point being, though, she's now saying, well, we need to refund that money. It's got to happen by law anyway. It's supposed to happen next spring, but she wants to do it now. I'm sure to try and make it look like she's giving everybody money back in their pockets. But we've had some people call the office and say, well, wait a minute here. We've got to make sure that my loved one has the money in that fund. It would be there. This would be anything over that 120% of what they need. So legally, it will stay solvent, but anything extra would be paid back. I just think it's funny that the governor's, I can get you this money, folks. We'll get it back. It was coming in the spring anyway when they did the audit. So again, just a little bit of political hocus pocus there by the Madam Governor. All right, this is an interesting one. And now these next couple of stories I think are going to tie together. There are about 376 kids for every Michigan provider for after-school and summer learning programs, according to a report that was just put out. They say, we know that there's an issue here and it needs to be addressed promptly with legislative action. I think this is interesting because when I've talked about our child care bills, we've got these 8 bills. A lot of people are, well, what about this? What about this? It's like, we'll get there. There's more coming. And a couple of the areas that I see that need to be fixed in the next round. Now, we haven't even gotten these past the Senate yet. So we're not done on this 8-bill package yet. But I can see down the future, what about helping people with school-age kids and their summer programs and the after-school stuff? We've got to allow our schools the ability to care for these kids after school too. And there's ways to do it, but the state right now, overregulation isn't allowing them. So I just want to throw that out there, that will be the next round. We still got to get our 8 bills through. Point is, people are focusing on education. And this is Wednesday, I'm just reading the tea leaves from the national election from yesterday, or the elections nationally yesterday. And in Virginia, the governor's race came down to education. And the I don't know, tunnel vision of the Democrats on education is starting to show. And Governor McAuliffe, or Governor candidate McAuliffe, when he said, parents shouldn't even be telling school boards what to teach their kids, started to play into that. People are saying, what are you talking about? And when schools and parents who say, hey, don't have a mask mandate, and they're being told, go pound sand, people are starting to pay attention to that. And this whole idea of teaching about race and gender stereotyping in classrooms, I know it's not officially being part of a curriculum, but there are instances around the country and even in this state where teachers have given assignments like that, about explain your white fragility and all of that stuff. I mean, you could go on and on. There are those cases. The point is, yesterday we had something that happened on the House floor that was, it was funny, but ridiculous. So we had a vote on House Bill 5097. I've discussed it in the past. That was a bill that would say, hey, look, you cannot have race and gender stereotyping in the classroom. Can't do it. It would be not right. We can't have that. Now they'll say, well, it isn't there. Well, here's what Rep. Beeler's bill said. It would prohibit Michigan schools from teaching things like that all individuals comprising a racial or ethnic group or gender hold a collective quality or belief. Just because you're this means you believe that. That individuals act in a certain way or hold certain opinions because of their race or gender. You can't teach that. That's what this bill would say. Another one is that individuals bear collective guilt for historical wrongs committed by their race or gender. So that's basically what the bill said. So we put it up for a vote yesterday. And the Democrats, to no surprise, start going on and on and on about how we're not going to allow the teaching of slavery. We're not going to be teaching. And I'm like, I wouldn't vote for this bill if that's the case. What this bill is saying is that you can't say, like in committee, when this bill was being discussed, the woman who was testifying against this bill was basically saying white men are oppressors. And I said, wait a minute. You don't know me, but are you saying that me, Jack O'Malley, because I'm a white male, is an oppressor? And her answer was yes. Well, that's a bunch of horse hockey, right? That she's the bigot, she's the stereotypical one, right? So anyway, so we put this vote up, and 8 Democrats, whatever it was, get up and have their speeches. We have a few Republicans stand up and counter it. Those floor speeches, it's debated, and it's agreed upon, I should say. It's agreed upon. There's a bargain reached. Okay, you're going to have so-and-so speak, and we're going to have so-and-so speak, so we have control of the decorum of the House. So everybody gets through their speeches. The bill sponsor technically is last because it allows him or her to explain themselves. We get to that point, and a certain representative whose name I will not use gets up and wants to speak, and she starts yelling and screaming. And the Democrats, let her speak, let her speak. No, that's not what the agreement was. We've gone through the system. Those are the rules, right? And so the Democrats refused to vote on this. So it passed 55-0, with no Democrats voting against it, which I think is kind of ironic. But they were basically accusing us of racism because we wouldn't let her speak. You can accuse me of a lot of things, but I'm not a racist. And I'm offended that they even thought I was, or my colleagues are. So this whole thing is, we're getting out of control, folks. And you need to realize that I ain't a racist, but I'm being accused of one. I'm not an oppressor, but I'm being accused of being one. So yesterday in the House, I was embarrassed for a group, not all of my Democratic colleagues, but a group of my Democratic colleagues are off the rails. And they were offended, I was offended. And I'm going to start saying, when I'm offended by that, I am not an oppressor, and I am surely not a racist. So, you want to piss me off? Call me those names. No more. So, with that, I leave you, and hope you have a good week. We're heading into November, obviously. I'll be back next week, and we'll fill you in on what's happening. We're heading into the holidays, too, so hopefully we have a good time. So that's the latest from what I can tell you what's going on in Lansing. Went a little long, but I think it was all fairly good stuff. So I'll talk to you again next week. You be safe and enjoy this changing season. All right, take care.